Alright, so about a couple hours ago, I went ahead and moved the Vuetify components project from the EDU Fedora organization over to the main Fedora organization here, and also created a preview release for it. And that's because we would have already made a release on NPM or made it public on NPM. And as a result of that, I wanted to also just create a associated release for anyone who is coming to go ahead and see that, and also have that consistency available to whatever, even though there is a lot of updates that needs to be added to it and changes, and that's why I decided to have it as a pre-release instead of an official release. And I wanted to just touch on those updates and really just showed what would have changed in addition to the main focus of this video, which is essentially how to add this library to a Nuxt application. So if we cd into development repository or repos VFC, we'll notice the slight differences, and that's essentially we've added a changelog which just has this basic text in here, this basic release message essentially, in addition to the fact that I would have moved the VFC test actually up or removed it from out of here because it's not necessary to be there. So went ahead and removed that. The playground, the only thing that was changed in here would have been the git. There was a git directory in there, so that was removed, the .git directory, because we're only going to be using one git repository essentially to manage all of this. So that was it. In addition to the fact that we changed the origin, so the URL for this would have been changed, and that is pretty simple. All we have to do is do get remote, and we can either set the URL, so or for the origin essentially, and we just change it over to this one here, well, the SSH one obviously. So now what the URL is saying to us is well, we want the origin, so this is now the new URL for it essentially. Previously it would have been the edu Fedora one. So that's about the changes that were there. So now we're going to pretty much just look at adding this to a Nuxt application. So cd up, and then I'm gonna go into the usual directory, which is going to be projects YouTube Nuxt, and we're going to go ahead and actually just create a Nuxt project from scratch and then do the installation in there. So we're gonna do pnpm create Nuxt app, and we're just gonna call this VFC Nuxt, and we'll just click on enter. So this will just go ahead and create our Nuxt application or start the process of creating it. Alright, so we're gonna keep the same name. We're gonna work with JavaScript, Yarn. I guess we're gonna use Vuetify. Obviously, we'll just have this automatically set up for us instead of having to reconfigure all of this over again. And you'll notice that this is actually a Vue 2 project or a Nuxt 2 project, and that's essentially because of the fact that the VFC is still running on Vue 2. So whenever we make a transition over to Vue 3, then we'll look at how we can apply this to Vue 3. Otherwise, you can always look at the different setups that I would have uploaded previously on how you can add Vuetify 3 to a Nuxt 3 application. Just go ahead and select this. We're going to be using HTML, and we don't need anything else. I'm going to keep this as a single page application, and we're gonna keep this static, and we're not going to be using git, at least not no. Alright, so seeing that that's done, we can cd into this project here, and we need to do some amount of configuration. So the first thing that we want to do is to install the application, the library itself. So if we go over to should be npmjs.com, and we go for @fedora / VFC, we should see this package here because it's the direct name, so it's gonna link us over, which was published 6 days ago. And to my surprise, I didn't expect there to be so many downloads actually in such a short period of time. So it seems like this is something that you guys are actually really interested in. So we can, if there's anything like in particular that interests you, then you can always just leave an issue over on the GitHub page for either a new feature or bug or anything that is related to that. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. So this is our installation step because we don't necessarily have any documentation, and that's something that we're going to be looking at very soon. But we're just gonna do an npm install of the package, and that's it. So we're gonna do, first we're gonna be using pnpm, and we're going to do add, and this is going to be adding as a dev dependency. We're gonna do fedora /vfc, and it's gonna should pretty quickly do the installation for us. Alright, so now that we have this installed, we can pretty much just do some configuration now. So we can just check the version that we have here, so you can see that we have it in our dev dependency along with Vuetify and NuxtJS Vuetify. You can see that we have this right here. So that's about that. We need to add something. So the way in which we can apply or add this library to our Nux project is through a plugin at this point. So there are primarily two ways in which you can extend a Nux application. That's through a module or a plugin, and for our context, essentially what we're going to be using is a plugin because we don't have a module. I don't think I'll be creating a module for this because it wouldn't really make any sense, to be honest. So what we're going to be using is just the plugins way of doing it. So I'm going to just create a directory because there's none in here just yet. So it's going to be our plugins directory, and in here I'm going to create a file called vfc.js. This could be TypeScript. If you're using TypeScript, it doesn't matter. And then we're going to be adding the configuration. I'm just going to be lazy as usual and just copy a configuration. So the one that we have in the playground. So what we need to do is to import VFC. I'm gonna put this down on a new line. So we're going to be importing VFC from @fedora /VFC, and we can add the CSS, but this is actually optional, and this is one of the awesome things about adding this library with Nux, because everything is already configured so greatly we don't necessarily need to add the CSS in here for it to work. So I'm just gonna put a note that this is actually optional, so we just leave that as such. Well, I'm gonna put this in brackets. I think that will work better. And the final thing is for us to go ahead and do view use. So let's go ahead and paste that in, but obviously we don't have views, so that's what this space is actually here for. We're gonna import view from view, and now we're able to add that, and it's like that simple for us to actually configure this plugin. So let's go ahead and save this. However, we definitely need to actually add this plugin to our config, so we'll just add it to our configs array. So this is going to be from the source plugins VFC, and I'm not going to put the extension. Nux can automatically pick this up, and it's kind of a good practice because you can always switch this over to TypeScript or JavaScript, and you won't really have an issue. So let's go ahead and save that. We just got some formatting, and that's fine. What I want to do now is to actually just add an extra page in here, so for which we're going to be using as our test essentially. So I'm gonna call this login.view, and this is going to show our login component. I'm gonna just open our templates tags, and well, this should not be a div. And in here, essentially all we're going to do is do VFC login, and this is just the alternate syntax for actually doing this. Let's go ahead and save this now. We get a little bit of formatting, and that should be it for our test, because everything is being automatically imported at this point. Obviously we can always change that to import them separately, but for now we're gonna do all. Next thing that I'm going to do is just to make this available. So I'm gonna go ahead and go down to this array here, and we'll just copy everything that we have in here, paste, and this is going to be a lock icon, and this is going to be a login, and this is going to be going to our login route. And essentially what I'm editing here is just the default configuration that Vuetify has, which is just kind of a dashboard view with a navigation bar, which you'll see shortly. I'm gonna quit out of this, and now we can go ahead and do a npm run dev to start our development server. And we're going to be getting an error here, and this is actually intentional so that you guys can actually be able to address this in the event that you're using this library with Nuxt. So I wanted to show you guys. So you can see that we have everything spitting out here in the terminal, and the error that we're getting, this is a lot. Let me just go ahead and scroll up further or faster. The error that we're getting here is this fail to compile. Essentially here, so it cannot parse an unexpected token, and this is essentially because of the fact that this is, as far as I can remember, this is using CommonJS, and I think if we have our ES6, I think it's CommonJS. I don't remember exactly what it is, but we have to transpile this. So what we have to do is to go back to our Nux config, and we'll just go down to build, and we're going to add our transpile array in here, and we'll just add the library here. So VFC, close that out, save. So we have our transpile here, so this will just work that out for us, and I can quit this, and now when we do an npm run dev, we should get this thing up and running now. All right, there we go. So you see this, everything compiles without an error. So we can open this up, and as you can see, we get our default view here, our default application that's with the template of working with Vuetify and Nux 2. And if we go over to our drawer here, we have the login that I created. So if we click on it, we should be seeing our application, but I'm not. So let's look at the dev tools, see if we're getting any errors in here. All right, so the reason why we're getting this error is because of the name inside that. I guess the naming isn't what it's not working. So let's go ahead and change that. I guess we have to use it, or I didn't set it so that we can actually use the shorthand syntax, which should have been great. So that's a bug that I guess I'll have to address shortly. Let's go ahead and quit this, and now when we run this, we should get everything set up in the correct manner. And there we go. So now you can see that we have our login page, and it's also styled, so we don't need to add the additional CSS that comes with the library itself, because it's already configured very well with Nux. So I would highly recommend using this with Nux as opposed to, well, you can always use it with the view library, because that's how it is, what essentially it was created for. But you can see that we have a better integration here with Nux as opposed to with the normal view project. So that is pretty much it. That it's just that simple, and there's not really much configuration in here. And yeah, so if you guys ever go ahead and actually try this with Nux, you can let me know how it works for you. If you have any issues, again, you can always just go over to the GitHub repository and just open a new issue, and or for future requests or anything like that. And that's about it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.